Start Network is.
Oh, no punches!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
It's Monday, May 2nd, 2022. I'm Reese Colbert sitting in for Roland Martin. Here's what's coming up on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. A California father is desperately looking for his daughter who disappeared 3 weeks ago on a trip to Houston. We featured Felicia Marie Johnson in one of our Black and Missing segments. Her father will update us on the search. U.S. delegation took a trip to war-torn Ukraine. We'll let you know what happened and how the U.S. will be helping the country battle Russia. California police released body cam video showing the shooting of a man who was only carrying a cell phone, which someone thought was a gun. Luckily, he survived. Law enforcement officers across the country are facing murder charges. In Florida, corrections officer faced murder charges for beating an inmate to death. And a former Pennsylvania police officer is accused of killing a 12-year-old boy by shooting him in the back. The Poor People's Campaign is getting ready for its Moral March on Washington and to the polls. We'll talk to some mothers of the movement. And in our live Fit Win segment, reversing type 2 diabetes. It's time to bring the funk on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming live on the Black Star Network. Let's go.
He's got it. Whatever the miss, he's on it. Whatever it is, he's got the scoop, the fact, the find. And when it breaks, he's right on time and it's rolling. Best believe he's knowing. Putting it down from sports to news to politics. With entertainment just for kicks, he's rolling. It's on go, roll, y'all. It's Roland Martin, yeah. Rolling with Roland now. He's funky, he's fresh, he's real, the best, you know he's Roland Martin now.
24-year-old California native Felicia Marie Johnson went to Houston, Texas and disappeared on April 15, 2022. She is 5 feet 4 inches tall, weighs 150 pounds, has long black hair and brown eyes. She has a large butterfly tattoo with 2 roses on her right shoulder. Her family has been looking for her ever since. Her father, Kevin Johnson, joins us from Houston. Mr. Johnson, I'm sorry you are going through this. What can you tell us about the night your daughter went missing and how the search is going?
Well, the night that she went missing, she was sharing location with some family members, and they noticed that her phone hadn't moved in some time, and they was able to locate the phone the next day. And we tried to take the phone to the police, and they refused to take the phone into evidence.
So for the viewers who are unfamiliar with your daughter's story, can you give us a little bit more background around the circumstances of her disappearance? I know that she was in Houston. I believe she was celebrating her birthday or something along those lines. Can you just give the viewers a little bit more information?
Oh, yeah. She was celebrating her birthday week on Sunday in San Diego with the family. We had just celebrated a birthday dinner with her. And later on in the week, she came out here to Houston further celebrate with some family members. And I guess she wanted to make some money while she was here, and that's how she ended up at that nightclub. And that's the last time she was seen. And that was Saturday morning, which would be the 16th, I believe, or the 15th.
Okay. And you said that the Houston police were not necessarily willing to take into account her phone that was found. From what I read, I don't know if it was them or the FBI, but they conducted a search around the area where her phone is found. Are you satisfied with the level of involvement from the Houston Police Department or with the FBI?
Well, actually, the family member of ours is the one that found the phone through sharing location. And we took the phone to the police station and they refused the phone.
Right.
And a week later, after I had acquired some help from Quanell X, that's when they took the evidence. Five days after us attempting to give it to them on the day of her disappearance. And as far as the search efforts, there are a lot of people that's volunteering their time, and Texas EquiSearch is helping, and Crime Stoppers is helping. But as far as the law enforcement, I have just all questions and no answers. And
yes.
We're like 3 weeks in.
I
They won't
noticed.
even confirm or deny her identity at this point. I haven't been able to confirm or deny her identity on surveillance footage. Right. I gave my DNA to them to confirm the blood that was on the phone, if it was hers. I still don't even know if the results from that.
Right.
So,
I noticed that the Houston Police Department and even the FBI, the statements that they've been given is that it's an ongoing investigation, and they've been very tight-lipped with releasing details. Do you think if they were more forthcoming with details that would help bring your daughter home faster?
Just for the family to have some kind of information at this point, which we're almost a month into the investigation and we have nothing. I mean, something would be able to help us, to help them. We've been doing our own investigations via social media and through our own, contacts through the streets or whatever. But of course, I feel like if they would give us something, then that we'd be able to help.
Well, you make a good point, too, because, I mean, even if they weren't to publicly release data or information, there's no reason why I can think of that they wouldn't be more forthcoming with the actual family and at least hoping, you guys be assured that they are taking every step that they can to bring your daughter back home. Tell the viewers a little bit more about your daughter. I want people to get a better sense of her personality. I know that she's so special to your family, and we don't often get a chance to hear about, people like your daughter when these circumstances arise.
Yeah, she was just like, my mom, rest in peace. Like, she would light up a room, very outspoken, intelligent, beautiful. Like she was an aspiring model, very good with hair and makeup, kids. She didn't have any kids, but she was good with her brothers and all her siblings. She was like kind of like another mom to them because she was the oldest. So, just a beautiful person.
She sounds like she is a beautiful person. For the viewers watching, what do you want for them to do? What can they do to help get involved in the search or support your efforts? I saw that there was a GoFundMe. What do you think that people can do to help push the story to the forefront?
Just I don't know what they can do. Like, if anybody is in the Houston area or in the Texas area and they would like to, volunteer their time to actually actively search for her. But there are multiple agencies that are on the job right now, as far as the FBI, the Houston PD. I also have Sheila Jackson Lee, the Congresswoman.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I know I didn't want to say her name, but I'm just excited to have some people to help me in the search for my daughter. I don't feel like the police have been doing their job. I don't feel like, as a father, that they've been. I feel like they've been violating my rights. Because anything that I've asked, nobody said anything to me, and they've just all been very hush-hush about it, and it's obvious that there's something going on here.
Does your family have any kind of legal representation to help you sort through this process?
No, we don't yet, but we are looking into that, and if anybody can reach out to me with any suggestions, I'm open to it.
Yes, that's the kind of stuff that hopefully we have people watching who can help volunteer their services or steer you in the right direction. What's the best way of getting in contact with you or with, whoever you feel like is the right person to contact to aid in your daughter's search?
You can email me at kevin20069@gmail.com. I think that's the best way to contact me via email, and I will try to respond to people as quickly as possible.
Okay. I'm going to bring in the panel to see if they have any questions. Are you willing to take questions from the panel? Okay, great. All right. We're coming into the Ask You Questions. We're going to start off with Dr. Julianne Malveaux. She's Dean of College and Ethnic Studies. And we also have California State University, Dr. Omekongo and Debinga, I'm so sorry if I messed that up, Professor, Lecturer, School of International Service, American University, Reverend Jeff Carr, founder of Infinity Fellowship. Starting with you, Dr. Malveaux, do you have a question for Mr. Johnson?
I guess, Mr. Johnson, you've shared a lot about your daughter and her personality. She sounds like an absolutely lovely person, and we're really sorry that you're not able to track her down. Other than the police who haven't been very responsive or the FBI, have there been other law enforcement agencies, sheriffs, others, or have you considered the possibility of a private investigator?
We have hired numerous private investigators, but nobody is able to come up with any answers. As far as any constables or sheriffs, nobody else is involved that I know of.
Mr. Johnson, I have a question because I know that your daughter, you believe she was last seen at this nightclub where she was, trying to get a job. And I've seen some conflicting reports from the employees. From what I read, it seems like they have a recollection of her being there and leaving with a customer, yet the club itself contends that they don't have any record of her being there in terms of surveillance. What do you make of the disconnect or the discrepancies?
Well, the DeVary brothers have numerous criminal charges against them amongst sex trafficking and employing minors. So it doesn't surprise me that they were able to operate in the dark without any surveillance cameras because they claim that their cameras don't work. And I don't see how any establishment can operate in the dark in this day and age that we live in, unless there's something else going on there. As far as the employees, we've got conflicting stories, misleading information, just all kind of stuff. This has been a crazy, crazy situation.
Yeah, it sounds just like the most infuriating circumstances when you're getting different stories and it's hard to tell what the motivations are behind getting conflicting stories. Have you heard from any customers who were there that night who might recall anything?
No, I haven't heard. Nobody will talk to me.
Okay.
Nobody, like I said, it's a hush-hush on many levels. The hotel, the police, nobody's talking.
Okay.
Nobody's talking. And it's been 3 weeks. The police haven't gotten any answers from people. I mean, I don't know who can.
Right.
At this point.
I'm going to go to Dr. Debinga. Do you have a question for Mr. Johnson?
Well, first of all, Mr. Johnson, I really want, as a father myself, I really want to commend you for your poise during this time. And as we work to spread information about it from here, where I'm at in D.C. and where we're all over the country, what are you and your family doing 3 weeks into this to hold your spirits up? I mean, I really cannot comprehend what you're going through right now, but at the same time, I'm seeing such poise from you. What are you and your family doing to maintain your spirits at this moment?
Just keeping our faith in, the Most High. And, I know that this is the fight of my life. I'm getting strength from within, from my ancestors, from, people that's protecting me and holding me up at this time. And I'm just the love I have for my daughter, that I will not quit until I find answers. And I can't. I'm in a place where I've never been. I'm in unforeign territory with my own self, and I'm just a man of faith, walking one day at a time. And my family is doing the same.
Amen to that, Mr. Johnson. Speaking of a man of faith, I'll go to Reverend Carr. Do you have a question for Mr. Johnson?
I can't hear him.
I think we're working on his audio right now.
Okay.
Reverend Carr, you're muted. Can you unmute? I think you. Okay, we're still working on it.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. You held a vigil yesterday for your daughter, and I know that you appealed to Mayor Turner to get him involved. Have you considered at all appealing to the various mayoral candidates? I know that there is a big race for Houston mayor coming up, and it's a competitive race. This is certainly one of those things where they would, they should also be weighing in and trying to put their resources behind it. So have you considered that at all, or what kind of response have you gotten if you have reached out to anybody?
I'm just considering it right now since you're telling me.
Okay.
So that's something that I'm gonna have to put into motion. I have a busy week, so I gotta meet with the authorities and have some meetings with them to see what direction this case is gonna go into. What? Sorry about that.
Oh, no, you don't have to apologize at all. I think, do we have Reverend Carr back? Okay, we're still working on that. Yeah, I mean, I hate to get political, but at the same time, I know that you mentioned, activist Quanell X and the impact that made in terms of the Houston PD getting more involved.
Right.
And so, with it being an election year, there's no harm in reaching out to people who really have a microphone and who could potentially be elected to these positions of power and authority. Can you talk a little bit about the way that activist groups have, helped you out in this, and, just give us a little bit of insight into that?
They're really influential in just getting the ball rolling. Before, when I just had a basic private investigator, he got nowhere. Hired Quanell X. Next thing you know, the police got involved. They took the phone. Where I'm at today because of him, because he helped me. I'm no lie. I understand that a lot of people give him a bad rap, but as a desperate man, I'm telling you that he helped me.
Well, a rap doesn't make a difference when you're looking for your daughter. It doesn't matter. You're going to take the help that you can get, and you want results. It's not about reputations and all that kind of stuff. So, that's really amazing that he got involved. We have Reverend Carr back. Reverend Carr, your question or comment for Mr. Johnson?
Yes, first and foremost, you guys can hear me now, I think.
Yes, we can hear you.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Great. Brother Johnson, man, first and foremost, thank you for your patience, and thank you for your willingness to step outside of traditional circles. We know there's a lot of pressure right now to make this happen, and sometimes that pressure will come from law enforcement, but other times spirit and ancestors will send you people, places, and things to help you in this quest to find your daughter. And I've got a daughter around the same age. She's the oldest, man. She's into the same kind of things. But I want you to understand that right now with you, you have thousands of people who are sending their energy your way, and they're sending the energy towards you to complete this mission to find your daughter and to bring her home. So keep that in mind. Keep that in your heart. Stay strong, stay lifted, and know that we're all with you. Kevin 2069, is that the email? At Gmail. Sure. All right, I'm going to put this on, and I'm going to ask a question so people can see that they can screenshot that. Call this man, send this man your information. Is there a way that people can contribute to any kind of fund that can help you from around the world? If you need to investigate, as Sister Malvo said, find a private investigator. If you need resources to help your family, find other community partners. Aside from email, is there a site set up? Or if not, how can we get to you?
I have a GoFundMe. I have a GoFundMe set up that's on my Facebook page. My Facebook is Kevin Kevalino, KEVALENO Johnson, JOHNSON at yeah, that's it. Kevin Kevalino Johnson. That's my Facebook.
All right. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Stay strong.
I will. I'm trying. Thank you.
Mr. Johnson, we appreciate you for taking time out. I know that you have so much on your plate trying to find your daughter. As we all have said, our hearts are with you, our support is with you. Please feel free to reach out and let us know if there's anything else that we can do. And hopefully we can get people to your GoFundMe. And if anybody has tips, you know, they'll get your information from your Facebook. But consider setting up a free website just to, you know, make it a little bit easier to get in contact with you.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay. You take care, Mr. Johnson. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, I'm going to go I think I'm going to go to the panel real quick because I just do want to bring up a couple of things. I was looking, you know, I didn't want to, you know, get too much into detail with Mr. Johnson because obviously this is a very fraught topic for him. But, you know, he mentioned the nightclub and the kind of sketchiness around that. I wonder, and I'll start off with you, Dr. Malvo, what do you make of just the fact that they're kind of getting away with this whole, you know, we don't have surveillance and there's conflicting stories coming from employees and from the owners. They don't even want to admit that she was even at the club. What do you make of that?
Well, there's something obviously rotten in this story, and these are the kind of places that need to be very well regulated.
Right.
Not regulated. If your security camera is broken, shut your club until you get your security camera fixed. Too many young girls, and especially young Black girls and young women, will go missing behind these, as you put it, sketchy kind of situations. So you know, the police, the mayor, anyone should be basically doing a deep dive into the background of this club, its owners, because there's obviously something that's not right. The other thing I would say, you know, I was a president of a women's college some years ago, Bennett College for Women, and the girls would get really annoyed with me when I give them these safety tips and tell them, don't go out by yourself, you know, always have a partner, and they kind of roll their eyes and say, you know, Malvo, she's an old fogey. They said other things than that. They weren't very nice either. But in any case, young women, you have to be careful. You ought to go out with a partner. You ought to make sure you're going out with another sister. Y'all keep up with each other because there are a whole lot of people out there who are exploiting Black girls. Just say it, Black girls and Black young women. And the police, if it was a blonde missing, believe me, it would be on network news. But a Black girl missing, it's not that big of a deal. So, you know, the law can do better and we can do better. And we can't be afraid. I'm not afraid to be called an old fogey. If that's what it takes, again, I will say it to young sisters you watching, don't go to the club by yourself. Take somebody with you, even somebody you don't like. Just go with a partner. It's the only way you can stay safe.
Well, to be fair, though, she did have her location on her phone. So, you know, that maybe that gave her more of a sense of security because we have all this technology now where you can drop a pin and people know exactly where you are. But that doesn't necessarily, you know, insulate you if you get into a car with somebody who has bad intentions. But to Dr. Malvo's point, Dr. Dibinga, there have been multiple Black women missing in Houston. And, you know, it has been pointed out that they have not, the Houston Police Department has not galvanized to find these women in the same way they probably would have if they were white women. What is your opinion on that?
Well, first of all, I have to thank you and Roland Martin for covering this story, as you all do every night on the show in some way, shape, or form, covering our own people who are missing. The challenge that I have is that when we have this conversation, we're talking about Houston, but it's literally fill in the blank with any city. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about the situation in Connecticut, where within about a week span, 2 Black women went missing, and nothing was said until the family had to raise awareness about that as well. And so the message to Black America with this situation is, we are on our own until we are not on our own. We have to galvanize in every way, shape, or form everybody in our social media spaces, in news networks that we know, community activists. We need to start getting the Rolodex together, because when these types of things happen, we have to spring into action. They will wait 24, 48, 72 hours, do anything possible to not do the work in many of our cases. And this is just the latest example of that. And this brother has been waiting 3 weeks, and it's not only getting, you don't think if the police went down to the nightclub and asked them questions, they would get answers? So, and sometimes you see situations where you have people who are law enforcement who are working at these clubs. So it just, hello, George Floyd. Remember that whole situation where there was a thing where Chauvin may have worked at the same club with Floyd. So there's a lot of interweavings going on that the family is just not being made aware of. I'm smelling a serious cover up. But again, the lesson is for us, we have to get all hands on deck beforehand so we can be ready to pounce, because they just don't care about us like we care about us. And so I'm glad that Mr. Johnson was here, because he just reached out to thousands of other people across the country and the globe who are going to get on the case and make sure that this sister gets found.
You make such an excellent point, Dr. Dibinga, about activating. And really, you know, what was so frustrating to me, or just disappointing to me, Reverend Carr, is how he's trying to fumble his way through it. And it's such a common story, unfortunately, that we've covered on Roland Martin Unfiltered, and then 3 weeks later when CNN is covering it, they're tagging us like, have you heard the story? Like, yeah, we've been covering it. But, you know, we need to find a way to activate, not just, you know, to prevent these things from happening, but to really wrap our arms around families like the Johnson family, so that they're not trying to figure out basic things like how people can reach them or how to get representation and private investigators. You know, we hate that Black Americans are constantly put in this situation, but we're always trying to figure it out each time like it's the first time.
Indeed, indeed. And I think you said a lot right there. And I think what Dr. Malveaux was saying, in alignment with what Dr. Omekongo was saying, really puts us on Front Street to ask the question, what are we going to do when we are faced with a situation where people who are paid by our tax dollars are not stepping up to do what they are supposed to do, which is, I know it's a slogan that came about in the 50s, but to protect and to serve is a very real thing. It's a very real thing, because police, investigators, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the state investigation facilities, the sheriff's office, all of them are paid by our tax dollars. So on one hand, it's really sad that we have to continue to agitate for people to simply do their job. And yet in this moment, we find some opportunities. We find some opportunities to put pressure on. Those of you who know the famous quote by Frederick Douglass, if there's no struggle, there's no progress. We have to make sure that we put pressure on law enforcement, while at the same time looking for opportunities to come together as a community, to raise funds if we need to go out and volunteer if we need to, and to honestly begin to have conversations with people. If this establishment has been there, people know when they call it sketchy. There are people who are friends of mine, and I've been sketchy myself back in the day. There are some people who know what's really going on. There are people who know what happened. If this establishment is tied to illegal activities, then it's no surprise that they do not have surveillance cameras, because the surveillance cameras could potentially be used against them. But we have to make sure that we reinforce what the Johnsons are doing down there to find young sister Felicia, while at the same time, we have to begin to have more conversations about how we make sure we protect our women and our daughters, and how we inform them. I'm a father of 3 daughters and 2 sons, and I'm telling you from personal experience, my dad, my institutions did not give us a way to track down our daughters if they're missing. The empowerment that we needed to teach our daughters how to protect themselves in certain situations. This is an opportunity for us to begin to reinforce the safety issues, many of which were brought up by Sister Malvo. Don't go anywhere by yourself. The tracker on the phone is a good piece of technology, but if something happens, there's a delay time from when you notice that the phone is no longer moving and you can respond there. So I'm encouraging the people in Houston, for those of you who know about the establishment, for those of you who have worked at the establishment or are currently working, go to some law enforcement person and confidentially share whatever you know. This is not a moment to hold back information. We have a sister's life at stake. So if you're listening to this, or if you're in the Houston area and you know about this establishment, then it's time for the community to put pressure up and on to let people know what is going on, to come forward so that we could potentially save this sister's life and make sure that we're not putting any other sisters at risk for anything from bodily harm to human trafficking, real things that are happening in a real world today.
You're absolutely right, Reverend Carr. And the pressure, just to reiterate, is not just against the police, it's against our peers. Like Reverend Carr said, if you know something, say something. And I know we're supposed to say go to law enforcement, but you've been given the information of Mr. Johnson. You could also go to local activists if you feel more comfortable. I know a lot of times Black folks don't feel comfortable going to the police. Can't say I blame you, but the information needs to get in the right hands somehow. In whichever way you feel comfortable, it's better to share it with somebody than to keep it to yourself while this young lady's life is at stake. So we have a lot more to talk about. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
This week on The Black Table with me, Greg Carr, reparations. Is it finally time? Two of the country's foremost authorities on the subject will join me to try to answer that very question. A powerful installment of The Black Table with me, Greg Carr, right here, only on the Black Star Network.
On the next Get Wealthy with me, Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, financial literacy. Without it, wealth is just a pipe dream. And yet, half of our schools in this country don't even teach it to our kids. You're going to hear from a woman who's determined to change all that, not only here, but around the world.
World of Money is the leading provider of immersive financial education for children ages 7 to 18. We provide 120 online and classroom hours of financial education.
That's right here on Get Wealthy on Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Teresa Griffin.
Hi, my name is LaToya Luckett, and you're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi took a surprise trip to Ukraine this weekend. In a 3-hour meeting in Kiev late Saturday with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, Pelosi vowed that the U.S. would stand with them until the fighting stops and thanked President Biden for his leadership during this time.
President, our congressional delegation is honored to meet with you, to thank you for your leadership and courage, to commend the Ukrainian people for their outstanding defense of democracy. And we are here to say to you that we are with you till this fight is over. Thank you for your leadership.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you, Mr. President. Thanks all of Americans. Great honor to see here your team, to see Congress members, and to see Madam Speaker. And thank you very much for this support. It's very important, and I think you have to know that we'll win, and we'll win together. Thank you. Great honor. Thanks a lot.
We are here until victory is won.
Pelosi told reporters in Poland Sunday she was proud to deliver the message of solidarity to the besieged nation. Biden administration is also providing financial support to the war-torn country. Last week, President Joe Biden urged Congress to provide $33 billion in aid to Ukraine's fight against Russia. I'm going to go back to the panel on this. You know, it's interesting. First of all, Speaker Pelosi picked a great time to sneak out because all eyes were on the White House Correspondents' Dinner, or also known as the Nerd Prom, this weekend. But on the specific topic of aid, it's interesting because from what I've been reading, the aid itself is not something that is in question in terms of the bipartisan support for it. It's the Democrats trying to tie $10 billion in COVID relief to the aid of Ukraine that's actually jeopardizing both. Dr. Malveaux, isn't it interesting that there's bipartisan support in supporting Ukraine, yet not so much in providing additional COVID relief here at home?
Well, it's not surprising at all. I mean, the Republicans have been adamant about not wanting to support anything at home. They cut the child tax credit, which took millions of children out of poverty. They've been they believe that we're about to have a recession because of too much government spending. We may have a recession, but it won't be because of too much government spending. It will be because of the way that we've targeted the spending. They don't want to forgive student loans, and they're going to give President Biden a hard time on that. So I'm not surprised at anything, but I'm very gratified that Speaker Pelosi is there. I think it's really important. I do think that Democrats, if they want to move the Ukraine agenda along, might try uncoupling the two. But I think that Democrats, we're scrambling. We have a narrow margin in the Senate. Well, we don't have a margin. We have no margin in the Senate. We've got to go 50-50 and bring Vice President in to break any ties. We have a narrow margin in the House. And so Democrats are trying to use whatever they can. The issue of Ukraine is so extraordinarily pressing when you watch that stuff. I mean, I don't know if you want to cry or scream or, I want to have a paper bag party with Putin, just sort of, the brothers know what I'm talking about. You might be a little too young, but good old paper bag party.
We know.
Putin and just, he's ridiculous. But the bottom line is, having said that, the Democrats are trying to use whatever leverage they have. I don't blame them. I wish they'd step back a little bit, but I think that Democrats have so little leverage that they're hoping that the urgency in Ukraine may move a few Republicans to also look at some of the COVID relief that we need here.
But I'm curious, Dr. Malveaux, so does that mean that you would support decoupling them even if that put the COVID relief at risk?
If things got worse in Ukraine, yes, I would. Okay. I think the Ukraine situation, thousands and thousands of people are dying. People are dying here too. Right. Don't get me wrong. There are lots of issues here as well. But I do think that this is an international crisis. If Putin is allowed to prevail, it's an assault on all democracy. It is an assault on Western Europe. This greedy man, if he can get Ukraine, he's going to go after Finland. He's going to start moving west. And when he gets far enough west, we will be in a war anyway because we're part of NATO. And so if he gets the right Poland, these are countries that we pledged to defend. And so if we pledge to defend those countries, we need to do some of that sooner rather than later. COVID is not trivial. What people have to do with all of this is deal with their legislators. Republicans die from COVID too. And I think that some people forget that.
No, you're absolutely right. I think, though, the challenge is that to the points that you're making, Dr. Malveaux, is that a lot of people don't understand the stakes for us here in America. And so I hear a lot of criticism about, well, they're doing all this over there in Ukraine. What about us over here? Dr. Dibinga, can you just kind of, for those folks who have that critique, and I can understand where that critique is coming from with the inflation that's rising, with food prices and the gas prices rising. However, as Dr. Malveaux pointed out, the stakes are as high now as they're going to be. Or I should say, this is the best case scenario, is that things can be contained in Ukraine and the U.S. doesn't have to get involved because of Article 5 and NATO countries we have to defend. So for the viewers, can you just explain why it's important that the U.S. continue to provide aid to Ukraine?
Well, I think that's such a great question. We have to understand, for those of us who are out here, that it's not either or, it's both and. We can make demands on the United States to do what it needs to do for all of her citizens, all of her people who are here, while at the same time working to stop this world crisis. For all of those people who say things like, well, I'm black here, I don't care about what's going on in Ukraine, part of what's happening with inflation in this country right now is because of what's going on in the Ukraine. I was seeing a story this morning about how much of what Ukrainians were producing was going to help feed countries in Africa and other parts of the world where hunger is an issue. So there's another global issue that's going on as well. And so people need to realize that, and Dr. King spoke about this, decades ago, about how we're part of a global economy. So we can't have this myopic view of whatever's going on right in front of me is all I'm going to care about. Because when you're at the pump, there's Ukraine going on. When you're talking about inflation happening, there's Ukraine going on. And so we can do two things at once. Because look, if the United States Congress can produce $33 billion for Ukraine, yes, they can produce money for our streets. They can produce money for COVID relief and all of that other type of stuff. But when people are suffering, my parents are Congolese. I've been dealing with the genocide in our own country for over a decade as well. I've been to almost 30 countries. I've been in refugee camps. I've lost family members to war who I met on the same day who died on the same day I met them. I've seen this stuff firsthand. And the first thing I say when I'm in this refugee camp in this country, when I'm in this orphanage in Rwanda, working with people who lost their family from war, first thing I'm saying is, does the world know? And can the world help? And we can't be so short-sighted that we can only focus on what's in front of us and forget everything that's going on around us. So all my brothers and sisters out there, I get it. All of us here want our issues to be dealt with in this country, but we cannot lose our humanity to such an extent that we can't give a damn about another country, especially when what's going on in that country is also affecting the world. But I don't care if it was a country that had no influence on the world in terms of food, resources, oil. When people are suffering, they need help. Period, bottom line.
Period. I agree with you, and I love that. Do people know, and what can we do to help? Reverend Carr, can you just talk about the humanity part? Because a lot of people don't understand just the carnage that's happening right now to civilians in Ukraine. Right now, there are folks that are trapped in Mariupol in a steel plant. Russia has kind of given these false assurances multiple times about humanitarian corridors, which they've gone on to attack. There's a lot at stake just on a human purpose, in addition to the millions of people that have now fled from Ukraine. So can you just talk about that aspect a little bit?
Oh, sure, absolutely. You know, there are a couple of points here, and I'd be remiss if I wasn't honest with you. Part of me wants to light in and let loose a Thursday night Reese Colbert style monologue, including the brilliant intellect and the colorful language that you would use, my sister, on Thursday nights.
Please do.
To represent.
Please do.
Represent the number of people. There's a number of people out there. I saw a post earlier today when I experienced social media first. Thanks to you all at Roland Martin, I guess I've become famous enough for somebody to try to imitate me on Instagram. So it's interesting. I was going through posts. I said, this is not me. So I'm not asking anybody for money. So Roland Martin Unfiltered, man, come on. There's always somebody out there trying to take advantage of somebody having some exposure. I said, wow, but I happened to be there trying to report this account and scroll through a dual picture. And it was a post of the war in Ukraine. And it said, meanwhile at home, and it was showing some footage of a bridge under Philadelphia where there were homeless people and people laying out naked and hungry and desperate. And there was a question of priorities. So there's two parts of this.
I've seen that.
And as Dr. Debinga said, there is and it's also with. They go hand in hand. Many of us wonder what would happen if instead of Vladimir Putin, we were talking about an African dictator trying to spread beyond his boundaries. And we know that there would be special forces, there would be SEAL teams dispatched, and this war would have ended before it became a war with one assassin's bullet. We know that coupling that understanding with something that August Wilson, the playwright, said, he said the fastest way to universality is cultural specificity. That means that on shows like this, we reach the universal human spirit by just being our Black selves, by being our African selves, by telling our story. And when we tell our story, we fill out our humanity. We are seeing this happen in a global space with what's happening in Ukraine. We are seeing Nancy Pelosi from America. We are seeing other European nations rally around Ukraine and get themselves involved, not just because of NATO, but let's be honest, because of the cultural specificity of whiteness and the control that we have to promote white causes or causes that white people are dealing with, because all of humanity deals with war above and beyond. That said, that's why we hear more about what's happening in Ukraine. But let's bring it down to a really tangible level. We talk about uranium. When we talk about corn, I think the country is the fourth largest producer of corn that is being sent around the world. At the end, it does come down to the interests of America. And that's why Nancy Pelosi is over there. It's the self-interest of America, the inflation that you're feeling in the stores and the retail places, the supply chain interruptions, the gas prices that we're seeing. It's all connected. So yes, this is why President Zelensky has become pretty much a folk hero, not just with white folk and Europeans, but among many black people as well, because we identify from the culturally specific place of having to fight a war against a giant. It's the David and Goliath story. It's the little guy versus the big guy. It's the Alger V. Boswell self-made. I made myself emerge into this world to be successful. We tend to root for the underdogs. And I send a commendation out to President Zelensky, to the people of Ukraine, for saying, we're not going. And there's something that we all relate to in that statement. We're not going. And when we say we're not going, we also have to put pressure on the United States government to make sure that they take care of business at home. So we can't invalidate people who say, well, I don't really care what's happening in Ukraine because I'm trying to pay my rent. We can't invalidate that, but we can bring it to a middle space of understanding that as a globe, as a planet, we are all connected to each other. So we can push this aid that is going there, this $33 billion. And at the same time, we can say we still have CARES Act money. We still have COVID funds that have not been spent. We still need to build back better. And all of this better be first priority when you land back on American soil.
I couldn't agree more, Reverend Carr. I mean, at the end of the day, we can't discount people because, first of all, we need all those people in the fold, particularly politically speaking, because everybody who goes out to vote is not a diehard one person or, one party or another. There are a lot of people who more casually view politics, but they more closely view their pocketbooks. And so sometimes you do have to put things in terms of what's in it for them or what they have to lose, depending on the different circumstances that could happen with, what's happening in Ukraine or around the world. So thank you for breaking that down for us. We're going to go to a story in Connecticut. A bill providing Connecticut abortion providers is heading to the governor for signature, making it a law. Once signed, state and local agencies would be prevented from cooperating in investigations and prosecutions of abortion providers in the state. It modifies the state's extradition statutes and prevents an out-of-state patient's medical records from being disclosed. I just want to quickly bring in the panel on this because we've seen abortion rights under attack throughout the country in various Republican states. I mean, Oklahoma just implemented, I believe, a 5-week ban. DeSantis down there, Florida, has implemented these ridiculous restrictive bans. But what we haven't heard enough about is these blue states who are actually codifying abortion rights. And what's really important about this particular law is that, a lot of these abortion laws or restrictions are making it a crime for people to leave the state to seek abortions. And so what this would do is it would protect abortion providers in the state of Connecticut from actually cooperating with these out-of-state investigations. Dr. Malveaux, can you just talk about the importance of people being able, and it's unfortunate that this is an important thing, but people being able to have safe haven and places to go without fear of reprisal for abortion access?
No, I was cheering the Connecticut action for any number of reasons. Attacks on abortions are really attack on women. It's attack on women's bodily integrity and attack on our body, our rights.
Yeah.
Just our bodies. And so for Connecticut to say we are a safe haven is important when in another 20 states, perhaps, I'm not sure how many, I haven't counted the number lately, but Texas and of course Florida and other places, these Republicans, they love children until they get born. until they get born. And as soon as they get born, let's cut the child tax credit. Let's force these women to work. And so it's critically important, not only because the state of Connecticut will be a safe haven, but also because it sends a signal that there are those who feel strongly enough about women's rights, bodily integrity, and the right to have an abortion, feel strong enough about it to really send a signal. Now, let's be clear. Nobody gets up and says, oh, gee, I really love to have an abortion. Women have abortions because perhaps they have 6 children and don't want a 7th, or 4 and don't want a 5th, and can't afford a 5th. Perhaps they have abortions because they have an abusive partner, and they're frightened about having a child with that abusive partner. Abortion is not an easy choice. But these DeSantises of the world try to make it even more difficult by penalizing people, and not only penalizing people, then deputizing their neighbors to spy on them, give you a $10,000 reward if you tell somebody that somebody had an abortion. That's crazy. You're going to start giving people $10,000 if they tell on their neighborhood for speeding or anything like that. I mean, come on now. This is not the kind of society that we live in. So I just think it's critically important, and those who believe in women, and in women having bodily agency. And again, not only that, I don't know how many families can afford to only have one person in the workplace. But when you turn women into baby-making machines, you're taking women out of the labor market. So thank you, Connecticut. We appreciate it. I hope many other states follow suit.
You're right, Dr. Malvo, but another thing that these abortion restrictions criminalize is not just abortions for people who want to get abortions for any number of reasons, and women have the right to get it for whatever reason they choose, but it also in some ways criminalizes miscarriages. The first person who was being prosecuted under this new Texas statute, or maybe it's not new, but there's a woman down in Texas. She went to the hospital because she claimed that she had a miscarriage, but the nurse who was giving her health care did not believe her. And so she turned her into authorities. And so you could be in a position where you had a miscarriage, but some MAGA nurse thinks that you made yourself have a miscarriage, which further injures your trauma for having to deal with the miscarriage. There are also situations where people don't understand that miscarriages sometimes result in having an abortion procedure because, miscarriages don't always necessarily spontaneously happen. And so sometimes women who are undergoing a miscarriage, they're having a medical miscarriage, in order to expedite the process, which sounds awful, I hate to put it in those words, but essentially instead of just waiting for it to naturally occur, maybe they don't have a heartbeat or they don't have a viable fetus or embryo at that point, they go and have a procedure. And by the way, that procedure tends to be thousands of dollars cheaper than going through a gynecologist or a medical provider that doesn't necessarily specialize in abortion. So there are so many reasons why abortion access is important to women, and it's a woman's right issue. But Dr. Dubingo, we do have to be honest, for some reason, I'll go to Reverend Carr. Reverend Carr, we have to be honest, for some reason, this just doesn't seem to be hitting that critical mass in terms of, people really galvanizing around women's rights. I mean, Republicans in many polls are leading the generic ballots. You have Herschel Walker down in Georgia, who's in most cases leading, Reverend Warnock. You have DeSantis, who's leading his Democratic opponents, despite the fact that he just put in fact this restriction. So what does it say about our society that we have these attacks, not just rhetorical attacks, but actual attacks, and there's no response from the electorate so far?
Well, I think what we have to do is do a better job of putting this into true context. Because when we say society, most of us think about our neighbors. We think about people we go to spiritual community with, to synagogue, to mosque, to Elay or Egbe, to people that we see at work every day next to us, to our families. And we think that that is society. And in a true definition, it really is. But when we're talking about how society treats people, we have to frame this through government. And when we talk about government, especially municipalities that are local and state centered, we're talking about a different beast. Here in Tennessee, the vast majority of the people understand women's rights. So many people understand how vital it is for a woman to have access to health care, to have access to prenatal care. However, when you're dealing with a red legislature, you're dealing with a small group of primarily white men who have some very powerful self-interests in making sure that they deny women their rights. Here in Tennessee, we have a legislature that is constantly working around the clock, not just locally, but with national think tanks to figure out ways around the abortion laws that are in place here. At the same time, they are working on legislation that would make it legal for a grown man to marry a 12-year-old. So when you think about what is happening in concert, forcing women to have children and not giving them access to make the choice. I have to say this because in all transparency, I don't know how many of you have had the gift of witnessing childbirth, but all of my kids were born with midwives, and they were born in the house. And so I'm sitting there with my wife holding her hand, breathing, recognizing that I am completely helpless in the situation to do anything but just do whatever she says is okay and to keep her calm in that moment, because she's doing all of the work. To see the work that a woman goes through to have a child, and then to juxtapose that with a young woman who may not have the resources to take care of a child, and then getting beyond the archetypes and the stereotypes. What about the young woman who I may have counseled or will counsel in the future as a pastor, who was raped by an uncle, or who was put in a prison and a prison guard raped her? And after an exam, you see that the fetus is not viable. But because of the state that you live in, because of a small group of people who are intent on denying a woman her right to choose what to do with her body, it's a healthcare issue. Because of them, you have to carry this baby to term. And by carrying this baby to term, now a whole other set of circumstances are set into motion. And what happens to these children where they are born? Dr. Malveaux said it. You don't want to take care of a child once it's alive. But what happens to a child that is under-resourced? What happens to a child who might be special needs? What happens to a child who is confused because of generational trauma, because of rape and molestation that exists in their family? Well, they end up outside of the system. And when they end up outside of the system, as they do in Tennessee, you have a corporation here that's headquartered called Corrections Corporation of America. I'm sorry, they changed their name to Core Civic because they want to be a civic-minded organization that is the largest provider of private prisons in the country. So what happens now to these children who are born, who don't have access to resources, they become the fodder, they become the human capital to profit off of in the prison, school-to-prison pipeline. So we see this economy is based, just like it was 400 years ago, on human bodies and primarily our bodies. So I say a hats off to Connecticut and other spaces for providing safe places, because this is really about how do we provide legal, safe spaces for women to be able to have the same choices that men have as we are walking around this place. Last bit of information, because I've been ministering a long time. Let's not get it twisted. These children are not Democrats or Republican. There are people, without breaking confidence, don't be surprised if a large number of people who will be traveling up to Connecticut will come from families of parents who vote Republican and wear MAGA hats, because this has been happening a long time, sending people across state lines for secret abortions while in public trying to deny a woman their right to do what they need to with their body.
Well, we know that Republicans are always on some hypocritical BS, and we know they don't give a damn about kids after they're born. Dr. DeBing, I'm going to give you the last word on this, but you know, one of the things that I hate to point out is that to me it should be enough that a woman has the right to choose what to do with her body. But for those that it's not enough for, I think people really underestimate, and Dr. Malveaux mentioned this already, the way that these abortion laws deputize people to stick the law on them. So can you just talk a little bit about that aspect and how this Connecticut bill actually protects people from the deputizing of these other states that they have done for their citizens to tell on people or to seek the law after people who've had abortions?
It's 2022, right? Just trying to do a time check, in terms of the year that we're in. The fact that we're having this conversation now, it's scary. Let me give you an idea of where this is going, though. I was in Rwanda in 2018, and I was there to do some work with youth and orphanages and all of that leadership work. And I go to the museum, the Rwandan Genocide Museum, and there's a video in there I'll never forget. And the woman says, "Yesterday, I was paying my neighbors' school fees for their kids, and the next day, that child was hunting me." She was talking about how the state, through the policies it created, was turning neighbor against neighbor. People who they knew their entire lives. That's where these deputizing laws are going. And even when we talk about this critical race theory, false activism, people are starting to set up snitch lines. It's going to be deputizing. People are going to start being arrested for that as well. So as we bring it back to this abortion situation, this deputizing is going to destroy communities. It's going to rip people apart. It's already happening. And we see people like Ron DeSantis who are making an election police force. And we're sure there's going to be a pro-life police force because they're never going to stop. And going back to something Dr. Malveaux said earlier about keeping the woman at home, there's an underlying misogyny that is here about these men who don't want to compete with women in any way, shape, or form. So they're going to legislate their way into not having them in the workforce. So there's ultimately an underlying misogyny that is part of this as well. So what Connecticut is doing is great. But the challenge is that every state needs to be proactive and not reactive in making these laws, because the one thing that has not been brought up tonight in this conversation is the Supreme Court.
Right.
And we know what is coming when they overturn Roe v. Wade. And if we think we got problems now, the floodgates are going to open. So every area where it's blue, where people have control, local, statewide, whatever, they need to have all hands on deck to put every single law in place possible to protect these women and the people who support them and the clinics that serve them, because it's almost too late, but we're not there yet. We got to fight. We got to fight and fight. Just like they're fighting, we got to get out there and fight to make sure that women's rights are protected, because you can't be pro-life just until the child is born.
I couldn't agree more. And unfortunately, we might be, as you mentioned, with the Supreme Court, we might be heading to a place where your abortion access or even contraception access, because that's another thing that's part of the goal of the right-wingers, is to eliminate access to birth control. That could depend on the state that you live in, and that's just not how it's supposed to be in this country. There's more to come on Roland Martin Unfiltered. We'll be right back after this break. You're watching the Black Star Network.
When I first moved to LA, me and Joe lived together, right? And that was a big blessing because I didn't have to worry about paying rent. You know, out here struggling, doing my thing, and that was a big help. And then when I moved out, I think that's when I saw the division, because I think Joe felt like I didn't need him anymore. And it wasn't that. It was like, I'm a grown-ass man, two grown-ass men.
But actually, that is true. You don't need him anymore.
Right.
When you grow up, first of all, when you grow up, it's like, hey, you help, and this time you get your ass out the house and go do your own thing.
Right. He didn't want me to move out, but I'm like, you know what? At the time when I moved out,
I mean, what? Were you paying a light bill?
I wasn't paying anything. And I said, you know what? I need this responsibility. It's gonna make me work harder in my career if I know I got rent to pay, I got bills to pay. I was paying a cell phone bill, that was it.
Right.
No, but Joe was treating me like a little butler, because I'm telling you, I was like Benson. I'm telling you, man.
Please fetch me some water.
He was using Jedi mind tricks. Yo, man, you still make them good grilled cheese sandwiches you made when you were little? No, you don't. Next thing I'm at the stove, flipped it, and then it dawned on me, he just tricked me again, got me again.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Dr. Jackie, and on A Balanced Life,
It takes a village to raise a child, and truer words have never been spoken. If you're raising a child, you know that it's a blessed challenge like no other. Even more so if your child has a disability. We'll talk to parents and our expert panelists about the best way forward for your child to help you maintain your own sanity on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie on Black Star Network.
Hey, I'm Deion Cole from Blackish.
Hey everybody, this is your man Fred Hammond, and you're watching Roland Martin, my man, Unfiltered.
We have breaking news coming out of Tulsa. The last 3 living survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre had their day in court today. And the good news is that the motion to deny or to basically throw out their lawsuit that would allow the reparations lawsuit to go forward was denied by the judge. And so their lawsuit will be able to go forward. They do have standing to be able to seek their reparations claim. Before the hearing today, we live streamed the prayer rally held by Justice for Greenwood, the organization fighting for reparations for the survivors and their descendants. Tomorrow, attorney and founder of Justice for Greenwood, Demario Solomon Simmons, will be on the Roland Martin Unfiltered show to break down everything that happened at today's hearing. I do want to go to the panel really quickly for their quick reaction to this. I'm sorry, I know it wasn't in the program, but Dr. Malveaux, I'm going to start with you. Your reaction to this historic ruling that their lawsuit will continue to go forward in their seeking reparations for the Tulsa Massacre survivors.
This has been justice delayed but not denied. I'm jubilant. As you know, I'm a member of NARC, the National African American Reparations Commission, and we've been looking at Tulsa for a very long time. They've tried, going back to the late 80s when Charles Ogletree and Johnny Cochran were involved in attempting to get justice for these survivors. Moving forward, where Reverend Robert Turner, who was a pastor there, he just relocated to Baltimore, was out every Wednesday protesting, attempting to get justice for the people of Tulsa. So this is long overdue. But let's be clear, there are only 3 survivors. We don't even know how many people were killed in Tulsa. They try to limit the number, but we know it was much worse. We know that millions of dollars, not to mention the lives, the homes, the businesses, and it was only lost because of economic envy, because too many N-words, and the word they used in an official document was not Negro. Too many N-words had too much money. So it's overtime to re-examine this, not only in terms of Tulsa and reparations, but also in terms of reparations nationally, and also in terms of essentially this whole attack and assault on truth by attacks on critical race theory. It's very ironic that Oklahoma was one of the first states that passed a law banning critical race theory, the state where we can document what they did. We can document, but they don't want to talk about it. And so I'm just jubilant. Demario, brother who brought the case, a lot of legal maneuvering here to get this a nuisance. But hey, right on, brother. We can take it by whatever means necessary.
Well, I hear that. And it's interesting because part of the claim that they're using is, like you just mentioned, the nuisance claim, public nuisance claim, which is something that caused Johnson & Johnson lawsuit to be thrown out because the judge ruled in that case there had to be a specific crime towards a specific community. And as you just mentioned, Mr. Simmons has been able to do a lot of legal maneuvering to show proof, at least to this point. This has been 100 years in the making, Dr. Dibinga, and this could open up the floodgates for other massacres, and getting justice in those cases. What is your take on that? Do you think that this, was going to be politicized and that context will hurt or hinder the case for this Tulsa Massacre reparations claim?
Well, I was applauding because, as Dr. Malveaux was saying, it's justice delayed but not denied. And of course, we're not done yet. But I think that, yes, it is going to be politicized. And yes, it is good. People are going to do their best to hinder this case because that's what they do. That's what they're born to do, is to obstruct. And, I'm just, it's one of these bittersweet moments because we have these 3 survivors who already experienced something so heinous, as children, by the way,
Yes.
To see what happened, that trauma that has been with them for their entire lives, and we can't even give them the dignity that they deserve right now, and not even in having to have these cases. They shouldn't even have to be brought, because they should have already received what they need. I mean, we're talking about a situation where people were flying, private citizens were dropping bombs on this community. How hard is it to find the people who own the planes, for example? Like, if you care to do the investigation. And this happened all across the country, where these mobs intentionally wiped out communities because of economic jealousy, as Dr. Malvo was saying. So I'm happy that this is happening, but I'm really frustrated at the fact that our elders have been treated like this. I saw some of their testimony earlier this year, and they deserve. We do reparations for so many different groups. And, we talked earlier about justice for Ukraine and all of these other types of things. But what are we doing for our own people at home while we support all of these other initiatives as it relates to human and equal rights? And I can't think of a single group in this country that deserves the type of reparations more so than those three individuals. Enough of it already.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, just like you said, imagine the trauma they've gone through and had to jump through hoops after hoops after hoops. We're talking about congressional, testimony and lawsuits, but finally they have their day in court. So we'll keep you all updated and have more information for you all tomorrow. Moving on to our next story, though. Sunday is on Mother's Day, and as a mother, I know we tend to be at the forefront of everything to make this place better for our children. This week, we'll be highlighting the Mothers and the Poor People's Campaign.
Lord.
Next month, the Poor People's and Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington and to the polls will take place on the 18th here in D.C. to represent the 140 million low-wage workers across the country. One of those who will be helping to mobilize this moral revolution is Callie Greer. She is known around Selma for her cooking and her affinity for telling the truth. Mother to 5 and grandmother to 8, she has lost 2 children, Mercury to gun violence and Venus to preventable complications due to breast cancer. Venus suffered a hard and slow death, blocked at every turn from receiving what would have been life-saving care because she could not afford health insurance. Her breast rotted while the state-of-the-art mammogram machine sat idle and inaccessible. No wonder she's on the front line. Callie, a member of Alabama's Poor People's Campaign, joins me from Selma. Ms. Greer, thank you so much for being here with us. How are you today?
I'm well. Thank y'all so much for having me. I'm blown away.
Well, I'm blown away by your courage and your advocacy and your triumph through so many adversities. My heart goes out to you. My condolences for the loss of your 2 children. It's just heart-wrenching to hear. Can you give us a little bit of background on what really spurred you into advocacy beyond what we do as mothers, I think, to advocate for our community?
Well, the young, it's in life, we're given these gifts from God, and my children and your children, all of our children are gifts from God. And the young man actually that killed my son, we went to court and advocated for him. We forgave him, and asked for mercy for him. Mm-hmm. So losing Mercury came at a very, very strange time in my life. But to lose 2 children and one that was preventable, you cannot just sit and wait for so-called people in positions of power to do things for you. They're not going to do things for you. You got to do things for yourself, and we actually have to do the work to save ourselves. When I first heard Reverend Barber speaking about Poor People's Campaign in Selma in 2014, I was already advocating and doing stuff kind of like in a silo for myself. But when I heard him speak about the moral movement, I was moved by what he said. And, when you are moved by something, I had these little emeralds burning, but he threw fuel on my emeralds and it just started a fire. You don't hear people talking about moral standards much. And then the Poor People's Campaign is like all inclusive. I don't know of any other organization, entity, or movement that is all inclusive in that way. When I say all inclusive, I mean all can come, all humans are welcome that are fighting these issues. So I was drawn to it, and they have just been like, supporting me and giving me and other, all of these thousands of people the platform to tell their stories, like you all said, unfiltered, unscripted, and just tell the butt naked truth about what we're suffering and going through at the hands of people that are supposed to be doing right by us. As Reverend Barber often says, God has not called all of these people that die home, especially a lot of people in the pandemic, but he does welcome them home. A lot of our people die because of the lack of care, love, concern for humans that they have made invisible. So my fight with the Poor People's Campaign has been fueled by other people just like myself that refuse to be told, that they're not worthy, how they have to live, who they have to love, how they have to worship, and refuse to be oppressed and kept down anymore. And we just refuse to be silent anymore.
Well, I appreciate that you are so passionate and so active and refusing to be silenced and really being a champion in the way that you know how to be. It's inspiring because we just had a conversation where we talked about red states versus blue states and the kind of initiatives that are going on from, Republicans versus Democrats. But you really got to the point about this being a moral movement and how that can spur you beyond politics, even though there's a political aspect to it because you're obviously advocating for certain political aims. Can you talk about just being in a state like Alabama that a lot of people, unfortunately, don't necessarily feel like is worth investing into to flip from red to blue. But you're out there, you're doing the work on the ground. So talk a little bit about what it means locally to be involved and how you affect change locally, irrespective of, the outside perceptions of Alabama or even Selma.
So first of all, in Poor People's Campaign, we removed that narrative of red state versus blue state and all of that rhetoric, because all of these people are running, they have their own agendas. So we do not say blue state, red state, Republican, Democrat, because all of them has hurt us in some way as human beings. So living in the state of Alabama, 45% of us are poor and low wealth families here in the state of Alabama. That's a total of 2.1 million residents. That includes 52% children, 46% women, 59% Black people, 64% Latinx, and 37% white people. So it's not a color. It's not a black-white thing. It's not you're Catholic or this thing. It's a human thing. We focus on human.
Yeah.
57% of the eligible voting age population in Alabama voted in 2016. Out of 3.6 million eligible voters, more than 286,000 residents that can't vote because of felony disenfranchisement, including 43,000 Black people. So, and 483,000 people in Alabama were uninsured, and this was in 2018. This is post-pandemic.
Yeah.
And people are not even talking about the almost million people we lost to the pandemic. That was really preventable. Yeah.
Well, let's talk.
In Alabama, okay.
Oh, no, go ahead, please, continue.
I was going to say in Alabama, it's rough here in Alabama, but we know for one thing for sure from Dr. King's movement and with Reverend Barber movement, the Poor People's Campaign going forward. When we change things in the South, we change the world.
Well, speaking of changing the world, let's talk a little bit about this Poor People's and Low-Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington. I saw that there are multiple events scheduled in multiple cities. Can you talk a little bit about folks who might be interested in getting involved, whether they want to travel here or attend any of the other cities where there are going to be events? Can you talk a little bit about kind of the purpose of that event and what you hope folks will get involved with?
The purpose of all of these events is to just open people up to what this movement is about. Because if you're not in the 1%, you are supposed to be a part of this movement. This movement is not about one person or one thing. This movement is about us as a whole part of humanity that's been denied the right to vote, the right to justice, the right to living wages, the right to health care, the right to clean water, the right to adequate housing, transportation, education, all of these things. So in the Poor People's Campaign, if you can't find your fight in this campaign, then you don't have a fight. So that's why you should come, wherever they're showing up in your city or state, you should come and find out for yourself and see why you don't have a dog in this fight. Because if you don't have a dog in this fight, then you don't have any issues. You're in the 1%.
Well, I know that's right. I'm going to go to the panel. Reverend Carr, your question for Ms. Greer, please.
First off, let me say, Mama Greer, you're sounding and looking awesome, and I appreciate you taking the time out tonight to share your perspective, to share the work that you're doing down there in Alabama. My mama folk from Alabama, my daddy's folk from East Tennessee, my mama folk from right down there in Russell County, Lato, Seal, Phoenix City. So I know good things come out of Alabama. I still keep a box of Alabama dirt on my table where I got pictures of all my mama's folks. And I know that that's a source of strength, just like you're a source of strength and light today. Y'all are going to be rolling across the entire United States. I saw that you're making a stop here in Nashville, Tennessee, and a couple other spaces. How can people get on the bus or support the bus for this event?
Well, go to our website, www.poorpeoplescampaign.org, and any questions you have, and all of the prior work that has been done by the Poor People's Campaign is on that page. You can also reserve a seat. You can get a ticket there, and we have people organizing throughout the 47 states that are a part of the Poor People's Campaign, and we actually have some. Until later on tonight, you got to hurry up and do it. We have some sponsored seat for those people that are directly affected by these issues that we talk about, that you can actually get a seat and bring your kids, let them see what the movement is about and why we're fighting, and then why we're fighting for them so hard. So go to www.poorpeoplescampaign.org and check us out. And try to grab you one of those seats and come on to Washington, D.C. There's a meeting in Washington, D.C., and you belong.
All right. Let the church say amen.
Well, there's a big festival in D.C. that same weekend for Juneteenth, something in the Water Festival. But them tickets are about $400 right now. So if you ain't got $400 to spend on something in the Water Festival tickets to hear music on the mall, come on ahead and come down, and you can, for free $99, protest for higher wages and livable conditions for millions of people around the country. I don't know where y'all gonna go because the mall is taken, but it'll be somewhere in DC. DC is big enough for everybody. I'm gonna go to Dr. Malveaux. Question or comment for Ms. Greer?
Ms. Greer, first of all, thank you. Thank you so very much for your activism and for your work. This is a very pressing issue to look at our low-income and low-wage workers, especially in light of some things that happened today. There was a union victory in somewhere in the South. I'm not putting it all together. My brain went blank for a minute. There was a union victory. No, it wasn't in the South. It was in the North. It was Staten Island. Amazon organized, Young Brother organized Amazon workers, but today there was a setback. Unionization does make a difference in terms of what we're paid. A Black person who's a part of a union is earning about a third more than a Black person who is not a part of a union. But Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia are notoriously anti-worker states. What is going on in your state to further empower workers who consistently, because of course we were the enslaved people, and the condition of workers now is just a direct legacy of enslavement. But what are you doing, and what are others in Alabama doing, joining Reverend Barber, of course, but what else to empower poor people and low-wage workers?
So we've actually been having rallies at Amazon up in the Birmingham, Tuscaloosa area as well, and there's been 2 different votes. And there's been like intimidation of the workers from the company, and all kind of different things. Because, you know, folks, I mean, like you say, it is a form of slavery. And we pull down here, and folks, you know, like, they try to feed their children, try to keep in shelter. And then when the intimidation starts, you know, and if you ain't had enough, if you haven't had enough, then, you know, you'll continue to bow to the intimidation, bow to the fear. And we just continue to try to fight with them, support them, and push them forward for a living wage. It's not like we're asking you to give us something that we do not deserve. They want to pay us $5 and charge us $7. So, you know, you can do the math. They can do the math, but then coming out of pandemic and all the loss of life and all the loss of resources that people have had, I'm sold out to get what I want. So some people just ain't sold out like that yet.
Well, Ms. Greer, thank you so much for coming here and sharing your wonderful story with us, and hope to see you in DC for the march.
You'll see me with my family. There's a meeting in Washington. Y'all belong. I hope to see y'all there.
All right, we'll do. And that's Father's Day weekend too. So we shouting out the mothers today and this weekend, then we'll shout out the fathers that weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
All right, so I know that I said that we would get more on the story of the Tulsa reparations massacre lawsuit tomorrow, but we're trying to get the attorney DeMario on the line. Reverend Carr, you're the only person that didn't get to chime in on that story, so your reaction while we're waiting on getting DeMario on the line.
I just presumed it was because everything great had been said. We are taught to not multiply our words over much, right? So I'm excited. I'm jubilant. Y'all see me smiling here, and if I could jump up and down, I would. And it's not because I think that it's the end, because of course it's not the end. We know that justice is a long journey, but we also know that these ancestors went through some hell, man. And they paid the price, and they laid down their lives involuntarily, but they kept telling the story. And there were enough of them who lived to continue to hand this story down generationally to a point now where we can be in a position to still fight for not only the few people who remain, but their families who were infected, effected, and affected by this vicious act of hate, this low space in humanity that resulted in this massacre. We're seeing now with the advent of technology and the openness that we have to storytelling that this has been infused in a number of spaces. We've heard and seen this story in movies, and now we've seen it in television shows from Lovecraft Country to Watchmen. We've seen it depicted, and now it's pretty doggone awesome that we are now understanding as a collective across the world what the Greenwood issue is and what the Tulsa massacre was. And now we are now collectively putting that pressure once again on the people who deserve all of the smoke. But I celebrate because we have to be mindful to celebrate the small victories. When we stay in a low place of vibration where we continue to just be critical and be negative, the only thing that we draw to us is more critique and negativity. And when you're dealing with celebration, whether it's community organizing, whether it's politics, whether it's education, you always want to pause and celebrate the victory, because then it creates a vibration of success. And we know that one little small victory leads to another small victory. It's a brick in a larger house, and we go brick by brick, slab of mortar by mortar. We know we're going to have this victory because too much has been invested in it, and we are celebrating in this moment this first step of victory, and then supercharging the next steps that come after to make sure that we get justice for those who are living and those who are descendants of this horrible massacre.
Amen, Reverend Carr. I mean, I firmly agree with you. Sometimes we have to learn how to take the win instead of always being negative Nancy and, well, what about this and what about that? Take the win, take every victory, and build brick by brick. So speaking of taking the win, I do want to welcome attorney and founder of Justice for Greenwood, DeMario Solomon Simmons. Yay, welcome to Roland Martin Unfiltered on these great, joyous news. Please, first of all, we celebrate you and we appreciate all of your work and advocacy. For the viewers, can you give us even more insight into what exactly today's victory in court means?
Yes, absolutely, Reese and everybody else. It's so good to see you all. Listen, we're excited. The judge, we didn't really expect that she would rule from the bench today, but she did. And she granted in part their motion to dismiss, and she dismissed, and she overruled in part. What that means is that we're moving forward.
Okay.
All right, so it's the first time in 100 years that a case that was filed related to the Tulsa Race Massacre is moving forward. It's never happened before in history. That's the great news. The unknown is we don't know what that means yet about how we're going to move forward because she's going to file her order. We don't know what claims she's taken out. We don't know what our discovery schedule would be. We don't know when we will have our next day in court. But we do know we will have another day in court, and we do know we're moving forward. And I tell you what, to see the community come out, the courtroom was literally standing room only. It was hundreds of people there. And our 3 living survivors, my clients, to see them there hearing this, it's after so many years of losing so many survivors, and to see them so happy to move forward, it's just an unbelievable experience. I'm still trying to take it all in.
It really is unbelievable. And I want to linger a little bit more on this 100-year aspect. Like you said, it's the first time that this has even gotten this far in 100 years. Can you talk a little bit about what you guys have managed to do? And it's not a critique on anybody else who didn't necessarily succeed, but what was different in this particular court case in terms of the strategy, or I mentioned earlier precedent from maybe the Johnson & Johnson ruling before from the Oklahoma Supreme Court that laid the path for this victory today?
Yeah, we definitely stand on the shoulders of everyone that's been fighting this fight from even during the massacre. You know, it's important to state that, yes, our community was eventually overcome, but they fought even on May 31st, 1921. And they started the legal battle on June 2nd, 1921. You know, great legal minds like B.C. Franklin was filing cases while he was working out of a tent. We have those pictures. And so we are building upon all of those ancestors who have made a way. In the previous cases, the one that I worked on as a baby lawyer, working with Charles Ogletree and Johnny Cochran in the early 2000s, I thought that case should have been successful. I think racism was the reason it did not move forward, but that was a federal civil rights case that dealt with statute of limitation issues. Mm-hmm. This particular case is a public nuisance case. So we studied this issue. We worked on it for over a year before we filed. We compiled an amazing team of lawyers and people from around the country, people like Roland Martin and our lawyers and our co-counsel who just came together in Color of Change and Equal Justice Initiative and Legal Defense Fund, and Angela Ra, Tiffany Cross, our great co-counsel at Schulte, Ralston, Zabel, and so many other people that I can't name everyone. And we all believed in this. And last year on the centennial, when so many people came to Tulsa and said, hey, they wanted to celebrate the centennial, we said then at our press conference on June 1st, 2021, that as when everybody else leaves, we're going to be focused on this issue, and we want to get justice before these last known living survivors die. And I think that's just what it was. This is not like a novel scenario. We're not creating a new law. Like, we're utilizing the law that was on the books, been on the books since 1910. We were just blessed to look at it in a certain way and then work it out as a team. This is a team effort, a community effort, a nationwide effort of Black folks.
I love that you're really highlighting that it really takes a village to push the needle forward. So often, you know, we get checked out, you know, and we kind of throw our hands up. But it really took all hands on deck on every facet. You didn't just name out legal people, you named out media folks and community activists. So it's important for those watching to understand the power that we have as a collective, irrespective of your particular background. I want to go to Dr. Malveaux on this.
I'm sorry, I got to get to another hit, but I just want to make sure I got on the Roland Martin show because this is my people. I love you guys. Y'all still with us. Nobody else is with us. Came down here during the centennial. I'll be on tomorrow, my regular show on Tuesday. We'll talk more. I love all of y'all.
Okay, thank you so much for joining us.
All right, bye-bye.
Okay, I thought we had a little bit more time, but you know what? That's what it's all about. You know, we love when folks come to Black media when the news breaks, not, later on down the line after they did all the white shows. So shout out to Demario Solomon Simmons for all of his advocacy and for making time for Roland Martin Unfiltered tonight. With that said, we're going to head to a break. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
I'm Dr. Jackie, and on A Balanced Life, it takes a village to raise a child, and truer words have never been spoken. If you're raising a child, you know that it's a blessed challenge like no other. Even more so if your child has a disability. We'll talk to parents and our expert panelists about the best way forward for your child to help you maintain your own sanity on A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie on Black Star Network.
We're all impacted by the culture, whether we know it or not. From politics to music and entertainment, it's a huge part of our lives, and we're going to talk about it every day right here on The Culture with me, Faraji Muhammad, only on the Black Star Network.
Hey, I'm Cupid, the maker of the Cupid Shuffle and the Wham Dance.
What's going on? This is Tobias Trevelyan, and if you're ready, you are listening to and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
California police released an edited version of body cam video showing an officer shooting a Hispanic man holding a cell phone. The video we're about to show you is graphic and disturbing. Take a look.
Looks like he does have a handgun, and he's firing in a house right now. Shit.
We got to back up to man with a gun in the arm.
Looks like he fired around heading out on the south side of the street. He's gonna be in his left hand, right?
Might have to shoot.
Hey, let me get a leg. Hang on, right in front of you.
X62, shots fired, officer needs help.
Let me see your hands!
Hey, I got him.
Let me see your hands! Let me see your hands! Let me see your hands!
Officer needs help on him.
Yeah, hard kind of big.
Slow, guys. Slowly.
Slow down, guys. Slow down.
Do not move.
Watch your cross.
If I can get one of you guys to break off and come over, I believe it's against the wall, south of the drone, and stop going down traffic. Knock a little south of the intersection for crossfire.
Arrest him. Ready? Push. Put your hand behind your back. Hand behind your back.
What I do, sir.
Police received calls of a man holding a gun and aiming it on the street. The man survived the shooting. He was initially arrested and charged, but all charges against him have been dropped. A fired Philadelphia police officer is charged with murdering a 12-year-old boy running away from him. Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner charged Officer Adzul Mendoza with first and third-degree murder charges in the fatal shooting of Thomas T.J. Sidiero on March 1st. Police previously alleged the 12-year-old fired a shot at an unmarked police car and injured a plainclothes officer. However, new details include Sidiero was no longer armed and was on the ground when Mendoza shot him in the back. 4 Florida correctional officers are charged with murder in the fatal beating of a handcuffed prisoner. The Florida Department of Law Enforcement arrested Jeremy Goldbolt and Christopher Robin, Kirk Walton, and Ronald Connor for second-degree murder, conspiracy, and aggravated battery on an elderly person. The inmate was beaten to death after allegedly throwing urine at one of the officers while being removed from a mental health unit at Miami-Dade County Prison to transfer to another prison. The inmate was later found dead in the van during a stop. A medical examiner said the cause of death was internal bleeding. Okay, those are 3 very heavy stories. I'm going to bring in the panel. Real quickly on this, Dr. Dibinga, we have one case where it's a fresh case. The good thing is that the charges were dropped. It should have never been brought to the victim in that case. And then the other 2 cases, we see, charges being brought against people who have killed somebody. I couldn't help but notice, though, that there was a common thread in all of the cases where there was charges. And trust me, this is still a good thing that they're being accountable, but everybody was a little bit darker or around the shade of a brown paper bag. We want to see cops accountable for killing people. First, I want to see them not do it. But is it worth noting that it seems like we only seem to get these pretty unequivocal stances in terms of police accountability when Latino or Black officers are involved?
It's absolutely worth noticing. Look, we talk about these situations as it relates to police brutality and misconduct, and we've always said it's not about, Black versus white. We said it's about Black versus blue. Right? But even when you are Black and within the department, you see quickly that you can't operate like many of your white colleagues do. And that's been an historical fact as well. I mean, when Black people were first able to become police officers, they couldn't even arrest white people. They had to call white officers to arrest white people. So look, we see this situation here. We saw a situation, I forget what state it is in, when 2 Black officers shot into a car of a white suspect and killed his son as well. They ended up in prison. We had a situation, I believe, in Minnesota where the Somali cop, shot a white woman and ended up in prison. The standards are just different. And I think that it's important that Black officers take note of that seriously. And then when we look at the first 2 cases, it's also a cautionary tale, because when you have these 2 men who are shot who are not Black, it should be put the whole country on notice to let people know that if you don't start to really tackle these issues that affect us disproportionately, it's just a matter of time before they start seeping into other communities. Period, bottom line. Because when officers believe that things like qualified immunity are going to stick around, when people don't realize that getting something like a George Floyd police reform bill is actually something that's going to benefit every community, these types of things are going to increase in non-Black communities. And so again, if people really want to target issues that are plaguing America, help the Black community dealing with these issues first, and by default, you create policies that are going to help every community so that situations that we just looked at in those first 2 cases never happen. And if they do happen, there's real justice that is given.
I couldn't agree more. Dr. Malveaux, it was interesting watching that footage, which was very disturbing, how the cops came up with this entire story about, somebody is shooting at, the man walking down the street is shooting at people and fabricating this whole thing about a gun, and the whole time he just has a cell phone. There was no gun to be found. What is your take on just the way that these cops basically imagined, and they did seem like they were scared, but at the same time, they created the thing that they were scared about in their imaginations. What's your take on that first story?
Well, this is anti-Blackness at its worst, if you will. They were scared. Well, why were they scared? Because they assumed that a Black person had to be a brown person, but somebody had to be out there. It was a cell phone. Remember Abner Louima? This was 30 years ago, but remember that. We have seen over and over again road cops. I was just writing something earlier today, and only 2% of the police officers who shoot somebody, only 2% are ever prosecuted, not convicted, just prosecuted. And then the ones who are prosecuted, only about 2% of those are convicted. Now, we know in the past few years, we've had Derek Chauvin, we've had those monsters who killed Ahmaud Arbery, we've had a couple of others who have been convicted, but by and large, Black life is cheap, and that's why there's a Black Lives Matter movement. And police have been, they have got this trope, and it's going on right now. People keep talking about law and order, public safety. Here in Los Angeles, there's a mayor's race, and Rick Caruso, the billionaire who's put already $23 million into his campaign, more than anybody has ever spent on a mayoral race in Los Angeles, all he talks about is the police, the police, the police. And what he's doing is frightening white people, frightening them into voting for him, where you have a very qualified, eminently qualified sister in Karen Bass, who is talking about community. She's never said defund the police. What she said is let's build community. And I mean, he's outspending her like 10-1. That man has so much money, it's disgusting. But this is how basically you gin up emotions and then get people in a jury room. And when somebody has been shot, what gets said is, well, they should, like the little boy, well, he shouldn't have run. That's, someone says, well, he shouldn't have run. Well, why wouldn't he run if he's a kid who's afraid of the police? Why would he be afraid of the police? Because he watches the news. And when he watches the news, he does not see the police are not many young Black boys and girls. The police are not your friend. So it's, we have to, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act was such an important piece of legislation, but that Republican Senate was not going to pass it. And shame on Tim Scott, Senator of South Carolina, who was supposed to sit with Karen Bass and work this thing out. But that, okay, I'm going to try to be polite. Y'all can just read my mind. I know Uncle Congo and Greg can read my mind. They know what I'm thinking. It's not very nice. But that brother, I mean, shame on him. Just shame on him. Yeah. We had an opportunity to have that legislation passed, which would have made a difference, and probably in these cases, a big difference.
I agree with you on that, but I really want to pick up on your point about, people saying, well, the little boy shouldn't have ran. The bottom line is that cops, as much power and latitude as they're given in this country, do not have license to execute people, particularly people that are disarmed. And at the point of whatever people believe that he did, which, if that's just the cops saying, I need to see some receipts, I need to see some footage, I'm not going to take them at their word. But what doesn't seem to be in dispute is the fact that the boy, who again was 12 years old, was face down and completely neutralized, and they still shot him. And so this is the same thing we just saw with Patrick La Hoya a couple of weeks ago. So this is a pattern of behavior, and I'm glad that the DA there is taking action. But Reverend Carr, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the case down in Florida. With this man who was brutally beaten, and obviously he had mental issues. And, throwing urine is disgusting. I mean, I'm not going to justify that in any kind of way, but that's not necessarily something that's terribly atypical of a person who has mental issues. I'm not stereotyping all of them, but I'm saying once you rise to the level of being in a facility and in a jail-like mental health facility, likely there are some behavioral things that are wrong there. But what these cops did was they beat him within an inch of his life, and then he later succumbed to those injuries because he was in the back of a van. He did not get medical assistance like he needed to. And so what is your take just on the brutality of it and the lack of understanding that these correctional officers had for the fact that this is a person who suffers from mental issues, therefore needs to be handled differently than, a regular prisoner?
Well, when you're dealing with power dynamics, we presume that people are mental health professionals. We presume that everyone that fills out a job application to be a law enforcement officer or a correctional facilities officer is someone who has a master's degree in public policy or a PhD in psychology or even a degree in criminal justice. What we find is that is not the case. We often find people whose personalities draw them to the protective area of the blue, because the blue gives them, in their own minds, the right to act out their own often psychopathic and sociopathic thoughts on people who are helpless and less than. I don't know about anybody else, but I talk to a lot of brothers who are on the inside, who have been on the inside or used to be on the inside. Listen, it's nothing to get a bag of urine thrown at you from people who have regular sense, who will pass every psychological exam. It's not just the urine bags. You hear the story of the poop bags that are thrown at people. Why? Because people who are powerless, who are put into a cage, who are often mistreated and inhumanely treated, as the prison systems always puts in place and keeps in place and reinforces, these people do what anybody would do. If you're in a place where you feel powerless, you find one little niche, one little thing that you could do to at least rebel. And oftentimes you can rebel with your teeth. You can rebel with your bodily fluids. There was a time in America, if you talk to people who are from Mississippi, who could walk around in the 1980s and they could look at a person and say, see that guy right there? He spent time at Parchment Farm in Mississippi. And you go talk to them and they say, yeah, I spent time in Parchment. I said, I was walking with a cat who was a mentor of mine. I said, how did you know that? He said, because there was a time in Parchment Farm in order to prevent prisoners who were broken and felt helpless, in order to prevent them from expressing themselves by biting people. The first thing they did when you walked in, whether you had perfect teeth, no teeth, some are teeth or rotten teeth, whatever, they pulled the first 4 teeth out of your mouth as part of intake. They hosed you down and pulled the front 4 teeth of your mouth, whether you needed them pulled or not, just to prevent biting. So this is not abnormal for prisoners to act out in this way. I think it's also important that we point out when we talk about accountability. We know that Black lives do not matter systemically. Why? Because I wonder if there would be someone who would take on a study to see how many of that 2% that Dr. Malvo mentioned, how many of that small percentage were convicted were either minorities or women. So you see, the police prove when you show these pictures and they see that the officer is an officer of color or the officer is a woman and they commit a crime, all of a sudden we see that we do have a system that works. We do have a way to hold people accountable. We can't indict people. Why? Because in a system where Black lives do not matter, ultimately, Black lives do not matter even when you're within the system. And one of the things that Queen Mother Zuli Ursri taught me long before she passed away is something that came down in folk wisdom to many of us. And we'll remember this, whether it's a mayoral scandal, whether it's not paying your taxes, she would always look at me and say, baby, you know, you can't do what they do. So always remember, you can't get away with what they get away with. And when we see in the case of these correctional officers who reenacted a scene from Prison Break or Oz, they thought they would get away with it. No, now you get to face the accountability that we are hoping and speaking will come in place system-wide for the majority of people who take advantage of the minority.
That is absolutely true. And I call it the N-word wake-up call. If I wasn't on air, it'd probably be a little bit more graphic.
There, come on, bring it, come on.
But I call it the N-word wake-up call because people get their wake-up call. But okay, we got to head to a break. When we come back, it's our Fit, Live, Win segment. We're talking to a registered nurse who says she can help reverse type 2 diabetes. You're watching Roland Martin Unfiltered on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland. Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Hey, I'm Antonique Smith.
What up, Lana Well, and you are watching Roland Martin Unfiltered.
Black people are 2 times more likely to develop diabetes than whites. A registered nurse and health coach is making it her mission to change that narrative. She's done it herself. Creator of Reverse the Diabetes Mentorship Program, Sharon McFarlane provides education and sustainable life habits to help manage their type 2 diabetes diagnosis. Sharon joins us from Poughkeepsie, New York. Sharon, or should I say Miss McFarlane? Which one do you prefer? I want to make sure I say your name right.
You can refer to me as Sharon. That's totally fine.
Okay, Sharon, tell us a little bit about your program, Reverse the Diabetes Mentorship Program.
Well, Reese, first of all, I just want to start off by saying thank you guys so much for having me here tonight. My mission and my purpose and my goal is always to put people first. Specifically, in my program, I do specifically work with women. But my goal and my mission is always to empower through education and to give people back control of their lives rather than being told what to do by people, who really and truly don't understand what they're really going through, and people who unfortunately have never really been in their in their shoes. Sorry. So that's my goal, and I thank you so much for having me here tonight.
Thank you for being here with us. And I just want to get a little bit more background. So you are a registered nurse. So I would assume that this program, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, still is not necessarily a substitute for some of the advice that a person's specific doctor might give them. But can you give us a little bit of insight into how your program supplements the healthcare they might be already receiving?
Reese, the unfortunate fact is that our current model for diabetes management, diabetes care, it's really broken. We have 88 million people currently living with type 2 diabetes, with diabetes on a whole. We have 1.5 million people developing type 2 diabetes every single year. And we have 88,000 people dying from diabetes every single year. Yeah. And so when I created this program, it was not as a means to really replace what's out there, but more so to supplement and to enhance it. Right now, the model focuses on treating type 2 diabetes with a low carb diet and some exercise to really get results. But what I've been seeing, and firsthand from myself, my mom, I have family members. I come from a strong family line of type 2 diabetes. And for the people that I've worked with is that this does not work to help. So I work in conjunction with my clients' doctors, really and truly to help support them to get to the point that they want to get to. Because at the end of the day, as individuals, we get to choose the path that we want to go on. And while what I do isn't necessarily always for everyone, it's really for those who want to say, you know what, I want to lower the medications that I'm on because it's making me feel horrible. It makes me feel ill. It makes me feel nauseous, the diarrhea, the vomiting, and everything that comes along with it, while I'm still dealing with high blood glucose levels. So the women that I typically work with, they're really ready to make permanent lasting change and not just be stuck on like a diet roller coaster or be stuck on medications that kind of help with lowering blood glucose numbers, but then they come with a host of other side effects, right? And they want to avoid that. So I've been able to successfully help people to reduce medications and get off of their medications as well.
Well, and I think one of the key things that you're bringing up is that it takes some degree of dedication and desire to make sure that you're sticking to the program to some degree. It's not a silver bullet in terms of like take a pill and you're done. It really requires a variety of things that you coach folks through. Give folks the website before I go to the panel. I want to make sure that everybody are clear on how they can get in contact with you.
Absolutely. So my website is www.sharonmcfarlane.com.
Okay, sounds good. All right, I'm going to go to the panel. I'm going to start off with you, Dr. Dibinga. Any questions for Sharon?
First of all, thank you for the incredible work that you're doing. I mean, it's literally life-saving. And one of the questions I have is, what are one or two things that you do in the beginning that get your clients to realize that they can take control of this, as opposed to what you were saying earlier, just staying with pills and all of that other type of stuff? What are some of the things that you do that help people get the breakthroughs to want to actually go and do this work in the way that you're coaching them?
That is a beautiful question. And to be honest with you, what I've found that brings about the most success and the most consistency with people is showing them who they truly are. Unfortunately, with the everyday motions that we go through with life, a lot of us, we've lost the art of true living. We just wake up in the morning and we go through this whole rigmarole just to get through the day, to go to bed, to do it over again. So one of the first things that I do is to identify the hero within the arena, within that person's heart, the true soul, right? And to let them know that, hey, you are worth so much more than being sick, right? Everyone, like, we all have a purpose, we all have a mission, we all have goals and dreams. And for some of the women that I work with, they didn't what the dreams and the visions they had for themselves at 16 years old, and now they're in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and it's a complete and drastic difference, and not in a good way, in a horrible way. Right? We see marriages being affected as a result of this illness. We see, people unable to have children as a result of uncontrolled diabetes. We see all of these other secondary illnesses that are also being developed as a result as well. So really and truly, my goal and my purpose is to show people, to show women, you are much more than what you are seeing in the mirror right now. Your life is worth it, and we will get through this.
Dr. Malveaux, question for Sharon.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for your work. There's so many Black people, especially Black women, who are affected by diabetes and who, in many cases, die from it. I myself am a diabetic, which I struggle to control, but I do a pretty good job. But it really is something that infects our community. But what you're saying it seems like you're talking more about the inside than the outside, more about how you feel taking you to where you need to be. Some people, when they have an A1C that's very high, I hate to put this sounds really crass, but they ain't got time for all that. They got to get those numbers down right now. I don't give, if you feel good about yourself or bad about yourself, you got to get your numbers down, or people will be amputating stuff on you. How do you fast track the process?
Absolutely. So the work really starts within the second week of the program. And then we make small changes, actionable changes every single day, and we change it one meal at a time. So just for reference, the average hemoglobin A1C reduction over the course of the 2-3 months is anywhere from 2 to 6%. And it's directly proportional to how high the person's hemoglobin A1C was when they started the program, as well as the work that they put in. So when I said that, we focus on the person that's within, yes, that's done in the introductory call in the beginning. The first week, we take care of all of that good stuff. And then at the beginning of week 2, we get started right away on the education aspect and the action aspect. Because one of the things I love to say is this is action. This is not a sit on the couch and get healthy program. This is action.
Reverend Carr, question for Sharon.
Yes, indeed. First off, I want to congratulate you, Sharon, for the light that you're putting in the world and the healing that you're putting in the world for so many people. I always say that a proven practice outweighs a brilliant theory. So you have been able to demonstrate what it's like to practice good health and how to heal people. What do you say to people who might be watching right now and may have a history of diabetes or even diabetes in their family, and they just want to throw their hands up and say, that's just how I am. That's just how I am. What do you say to people who say that in their minds?
That's so interesting. That's a really great and interesting question. So one of the first things that I'll say to them is, guess what? That is not true. That is absolutely wrong. There is so much more. There's so much more that you can do. You just need you need to be surrounded by the right group of people. You need the right mentorship and leadership. You need the right guidance. You need a proven plan, and you need someone who's going to believe in you, and you need to believe in yourself. I get it. The internet right now is flooded with lots of information, and a lot of it is inaccurate. So I get it. And being someone who's come from a history of public health nursing, I get it. I'm a trained registered nurse, and how I was taught to treat diabetes. And if honestly, I think that if I didn't experience it for myself, I would have just been like, oh, you know what? That's it. I will have to be on medications for the rest of my life. And this is just my life. I just have to accept it. But being that I experienced it, it affected me, and I refuse to be a slave to medications. And I was determined to find something that was going to work because I knew within my heart of hearts that there is so much more to life than to sticking myself with 100 units of insulin a day. I was worth more, my family was worth more, and I was willing to go out on a limb and prove it to me first, and then to others.
Wow. Sharon, just for the viewers, I'm curious, how long did you have your diagnosis before you started this program or before you kind of figured out the techniques? And then how long has it been since you've seen results, whether that means that you're off medication or whatever you define as success in terms of the program for yourself?
I was initially wrongly diagnosed as a type 1 diabetic when I was 16 going on 17 years old because of my age. My blood glucose levels was in excess of 900 on the day that it was checked. And for those of you who are familiar with diabetes lingo, you know that that's a coma, right? 16 years old, walking around with over 900 reading. The next day of my fasting, it was in excess of 500. So, I was diagnosed at 16. I really took the reins of my own life in 2012. Can't think of my age back then. But I really took the reins in 2012, and that was only after my 3rd miscarriage and constantly being told that, you know, I'm miscarrying at 5 months pregnant every time because of my uncontrolled type 2 diabetes. And I refused. Because I've always wanted a huge and a big family, and I refused to let that be my story and be my destiny. So in 2012, I lowered my hemoglobin A1C from a 13, let's just say 13% to 5.3% in 3 months, right? And I was on 100 units of insulin at that time, and we're just making, no, it wasn't easy. And in fact, when I first lowered it, I was going back and forth, because I did not have the support and I still didn't have the full education. But what I had was grit, and what I had was determination, and what I had was persistence. And I knew that my purpose would not be fulfilled unless and until I really took my health back into my own hands. So back in 2020, so from 2012 to reversing and bringing it down to 5.3, fast forward to 2020, all the time my pancreas was not producing enough insulin. It was always low. And it's really why they thought I was a type 1 diabetic. But I got a new endocrinologist back in 2020-ish, around that time, and she did tests, and she saw that my numbers had actually increased from what it actually was. So now my pancreas is able to make a sufficient amount of insulin within normal levels, and I really attribute that to the changes that I've made. And, you know, for those of you thinking, oh, well, I can only eat salad and beans, guess what, honey? That is not true. As someone with a very strong Caribbean blood, I'm from the beautiful Twin Islands of Trinidad and Tobago. I eat my pilau, my roti, my cultural dishes, because it is a part of me, and there's no one or anything that can ever take that away from me. So it's really and truly reversing diabetes all boils down to how we think, we eat, we move, and we relate. And the reason why the traditional system, the traditional method does not work is because it only looks at the food component and adds a little bit of exercise in there. But guess what? We are multifaceted beings. We're made up of much more than just this human body. And we need to treat each aspect of our lives with everything that it needs to thrive. That includes our spirit, our body, our soul, right? So I'm a firm believer of that. So when I work with individuals, it's really to help recurate their lives and to make it so that it's personal and it's unique to them, rather than, oh, just eat some beans and salad, just walk 15-20 minutes after dinner and you'll be fine. It's so, who wants to enjoy their life just eating beans and salad?
Right.
I can't think of anyone. So it's really about creating and crafting something that's unique to you, and surrounding you with a group of people from fitness coaches and mindset coaches and a beautiful community of other like-minded women who are actually in it together with you, and that can actually encourage you, right? So, and this, again, it's not for everyone. Some people want to just stick with, dieting. Some people just want to stick with medications, and that's fine. We all have our own paths in life to walk along. And at the end of the day, we get to choose which path we want to take and, make the decisions that we deem best for ourselves and our family, because it's not just for us, right? I specifically work with women because I know that we have the power to change the trajectory, not only for our lives, but our children and our children's children. We can break the cycle of chronic illnesses, including type 2 diabetes and hypertension. We have the power and the strength to break that trajectory and to avoid unnecessary illnesses. So this is what powers me and wakes me up every morning to continue doing what I'm doing.
Well, it sounds like your program is not a quick fix, but it's worth it to put the effort forth, because in addition to, reversing the diabetes diagnosis, you come out as more of your whole self and a more enriched self. So thank you, Sharon, so much for sharing your program with us. And hopefully folks out there have something to chew on. And maybe if they're looking for that quick fix, this might change their opinion on to why they might want to invest more time and effort into treating their diagnosis a little different way. So thank you so much, Sharon.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Well, that does it for us here at Roland Martin Unfiltered. I want to thank my panel, Dr. Malveaux, Dr. Dibinga, and Reverend Carr. It has been a pleasure. A big thank you to you for joining us on Roland Martin Unfiltered, streaming on the Black Star Network. If you haven't done it yet, download the Black Star Network on all of your devices. It's available on the iPhone, Apple TV, Android TV, Roku, Fire TV, Xbox One, and Samsung Smart TV. If you would like to support us so we can continue bringing you the stories that matter to us, you can contribute to the Roland Martin Unfiltered Fan Club. Cash App is $RM Unfiltered, PayPal /RM Unfiltered, Venmo RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at Roland S. Martin. You can also mail in your check, money order, P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037 0196. I'm Reese Colbert. Roland will be back tomorrow. Have a great night. Holla.